And then we saw something absolutely fabulous, absolutely
incredible.
Yes, we saw our national flag.
And suddenly there was a guy with a motorcycle who had our Estonian flag, and it was really great feeling to see.
But then when this first step was done, then suddenly, in a moment, those flags started to blossom everywhere. It was like spring is coming, and then things started to blossom.
A few Estonian flags had come out in previous demonstrations, but never had they been so brazenly flown before so many people in one place. Word spread, and for almost a week, thousands more people arrived each night. And now, average citizens brought flags they had been hiding in their homes for nearly 50 years.
It may sound today a bit silly, it may sound even naive. Those days it was so natural to express our feelings by singing and declaring that we have right for our own country.
Ja vaata sellest ma sattusin niivõrd vaimustusse, et hommikul kodus ärgates ja esimese kohvi ära joonuna ma istusin kohe laua taha ja kirjutasin selle laulev revolutsiooni, andsin edasi seda meeleolu. Kui siiamaani on revolutsioone tehtud hävitamisega, põletamisega, tapmisega, vihkamisega, siis meie hakkasime oma revolutsiooni tegema naerdes ja lauldes.
In the heart, there was a little bit afraid feeling that this was not a free country here. This was Soviet Union.
After those nights, there was no turning back. The revolution had a name and widespread support from common Estonians. No matter what happened next, it was clear that singing would be the fuel for change. But a broad range of movements began to emerge, all with conflicting strategies about how best to achieve freedom. Some were cautious, others quite bold. The Heritage Society, led by Trevimi Veliste and Mart Laar, used the cover of Glasnost and Perestroika to generate open discussions about Estonian culture and history. They knew that talking about Estonia's past would undermine Soviet authority.
And it matched perfectly with Gorbachev's idea of Glasnost, free speech, so that you could freely speak about what had happened, you could freely speak about history, and everybody understood immediately that there must be something more in it than just speaking about the past. And it gave people a lot of hope.
The Estonian National Independence Party, led by Lagla Pare, was quite bold. Its leaders publicly declared that under international law, the Republic of Estonia was still an independent nation. They wanted the Soviets out of Estonia. Few Estonians openly supported the Independence Party, still living in fear of Soviet reprisals. The Popular Front appealed to the masses by offering a safer strategy, working with the Communist Party to push for greater freedoms from within. But they had no intention of declaring independence. The Popular Front offered people some level of hope, but without forcing them to challenge Soviet authority. Edgar Savisaar announced its formation on a TV show in April of 1988.
Ma pean silmas poliitilist massiorganisatsiooni partei juures. See oleks organisatsioon, kes partei kõrval kõige laiemates massides teostaks perestroikat Eesti.
There were tensions amongst the leaders of these different movements. Most Estonians chose to stand up for freedom, showing up at any demonstration regardless of who organized it. Gorbachev was surprised by the groundswell for independence, so he attempted to quiet the unrest by replacing the old hardline Estonian Communist Party leader with a moderate named Vaino Valjas. Valjas acted as a buffer between the Estonians and Moscow. And when confronted by independence-minded protesters, he had a tendency to look the other way. Meanwhile, the Russians who had been relocated to live in Estonia began to get nervous. Since 1940, the Russian population in Estonia had grown from 8% to over 40% of the nation, mainly due to the Soviet policy of Russification. With help from Moscow, some people started their own anti-independence movement called Interfront.
Протаскивать идеи сепаратизма, вплоть до двухпартийности и прямого противопоставления.
In the wake of Glasnost, Estonians were finally able to speak out. But the Heritage Society, the Independence Party, and the Popular Front all had very different strategies for gaining freedom. And now, Interfront was working against any change whatsoever. It began to appear that Estonians lacked a unified voice, and that the energy of the first protests would be lost, that the movement would fizzle out into a series of disagreements, even over how best to define independence. In September of 1988, the Popular Front organized a mass rally at the Song Festival grounds. No one anticipated the turnout. More than 300,000 people showed up. Nearly 1 in every 3 Estonians was here.
Me tahtsime teha ühe suure rahvapeo, samal ajal ka kõnekoosoleku, samal ajal ka poliitilise meeleavalduse ja arvasime, et parim koht rahva kokkukutsumiseks on Tallinna lauluväljak, kõigile lisaks ka sümboolne koht.
The Popular Front wouldn't let Independence Party leaders take the stage, feeling that their views were too radical, that they might push the KGB too far. But they did invite Heritage Society leaders, assuming that their speeches would carry a softer message about Estonian culture.
I wrote my speech just a few hours before I spoke, and it was a very spontaneous speech, and I didn't read much of it. I read some passages, but I mostly spoke by heart. And then I also spoke the Estonian language should be the language of this country. And I also spoke about Russia's role in history, and I compared Russia to the bear of Europe, who just turns his eyes to the west looking for honey in Western Europe. Savisaar was very cross and very disappointed because of the way I spoke, because I was too radical, I went too far, and this is why everybody remembers that speech.
I was sitting there and looking at the people, and it was like an ocean. And then with every speech, that ocean started to wave more and more because the emotions were coming higher and higher. And I felt that that is a moment of great risk. And if there will be any match, then the fire could go and there could be something which you cannot then keep under any safety.
Tuleb süstida tulevikuusku, võiduusku, ja tuleb vahepeal puudutada ka midagi nii kibedat, et see lausa pisarad inimestele silma toob. Nii et ma timmisin seda kõnet väga hoolega. Ja vaat siis ma konstrueerisingi selle sama lause, ükskord me võidame niikuinii. Ükskord me võidame niikuinii! Kui ma seejärel käisin igal pool Eestis edasi kõnesid pidamas ja vahel jätsin selle ütlemata, siis rahvas hakkas karjuma, Heinz, ütle see lausega.
Ta oli mitte ainult rahva meeleolu, tahteväljend, vaid ta näitas ka väga selgelt Moskva keskvõimule, et vastu hakata otseselt jõumeetoditega on vägagi riskantne.
Very important is that Estonian nation is very small and we have no more weapons than singing. This being together, singing together, this was our power.
A sense of hope and unity was everywhere. With Vaino Valjas now heading up the Communist Party in Estonia, lawmakers felt that they could risk making changes. First, they brazenly passed legislation declaring that Estonian laws would take precedence over those of the USSR. A delegation of Estonian communist leaders were immediately called to Moscow to face an angry Gorbachev.
Ta tuletas mulle meelde, et tolleaegses liidu konstitutsioonis oli sisse viidud parandus, kus karistati 10-aastase vabaduskaotusega, kui tahtlikult inimene rikub põhiseadust või konstitutsiooni. Ta rõhutas lausa seda, et see on tahtlik rikkumine ja arvestagu ma sellega.
Working within the existing communist structure, the Estonian Supreme Council kept pushing forward, almost taunting Gorbachev. It made Estonian the official language of the nation rather than Russian, and replaced the Soviet hammer and sickle flag with the Estonian blue, black, and white.
The news agency TASS said Soviet leaders have ordered the Baltic states of Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania to drop a series of what are called radical new laws about economic and political freedom. The Kremlin says those laws violate the Soviet Constitution.
Estonian Communist Party leaders found themselves having to strike a delicate balance with Gorbachev. On one hand, cautiously working to increase Estonia's relative freedoms within the Soviet Union. On the other, avoiding any direct confrontation that could lead to a military crackdown.
Когда 26 ноября это все, заверяю вас, от самых добрых намерений все было. Так что, чтобы передвинуть все же жизнь, хотя методы неправильно, может быть, представить.